We're going to start our next session here, so welcome. This will be a very exciting panel discussion on pathways to success. So we have some great farms that we're going to feature here today for this. So I'm very pleased to welcome Dr. Steven Sommerfeld, who is the Chief Science Officer at Superior Fresh in Hixton, Wisconsin. Zach Lind, Production Manager at Driftless Fish Company in Rushford, Minnesota. And Matt Brem, owner of Brem's Perch Farm in West Liberty, Ohio. So I want to welcome all those panelists and thank them so much for being here today. So to begin, we'd like each panelist to provide a very brief introduction, about 5 minutes or less, about themselves and the company or the facility they represent. So we're going to first start with Steve Sommerfeld here with Superior Fresh.
Thank you, Emma. I really am happy to talk to you during this Great Lakes Aquaculture Day. I am the Chief Science Officer at Superior Fresh, and I've worked in water treatment processes for fish culture for 3 decades now. And at Superior Fresh, we're in Wisconsin, central Wisconsin near Eau Claire. We're producing Atlantic salmon and USDA certified organic leafy greens and aquaponics. So to tell you a little bit about our company, Superior Fresh is the distinction of being the first land-based Atlantic salmon producer in the USA. And we're definitely the largest aquaponic producer in the world now. We're coming on to 13 acres of glass greenhouses. We have 6 that are producing right now, and the next 7 acres are finishing construction. And we're producing about 180,000 pounds a year of Atlantic salmon, increasing to 1.5 million pounds a year with the expansion that's just finishing right now that we'll have in the market starting in the spring. And with this integrated approach, we're able to be very protective of our water resources and sustainable. We're producing 100,000 pounds of food for human consumption for every 1 gallon per minute of water supplied to production and processing. So the nutrients that the fish are not utilizing are going to produce super healthy and safe leafy greens. And we have 0 discharge from the production and processing systems because of this nutrient recycling. Because it's very difficult to discharge pollution in Wisconsin, we regulate the water quality very, very well. So we're capturing a little bit of spill water and irrigating. Now, Superior Fresh is a family-owned, high-tech agribusiness. Most people are aware of aquaponics. You think of a small mom-and-pop owner-operator. This is not that. This is developed to produce food at the best quality and high volumes. It's the future of food. We're using decoupled aquaponic systems where we build the very best water treatment and recirculation process for the fish. The water quality in the fish system looks like swimming pool quality, even though it's been there and it's recycled over and over. And the same for the greenhouse pools. It's very sophisticated water treatment and recirculation, and then coupling the two. They're in separate buildings, coupling those water so that the nutrients that the fish can't utilize, the plants can. There's a lot of automation of harvest and processing so that we get the best economy of scale and the safest product. When you don't have human hands on the product, you have a safer product because you're not transferring the fecal oral contaminants, the food safety bacteria. We have the best automation and environmental control in both the fish house and in the greenhouse, and a very trained staff. We have 80 employees. Most of them are technicians, but we have engineers, chemical, environmental, electrical, we have horticulturists, we have microbiologists, we have chemists, we have fish culturists, excellent staff to do this production. So I actually feel sorry for the mom and pop operator because it's really hard. This is not easy. This takes a lot of expertise. So we can produce Atlantic salmon to address the market needs. Our salmon are non-GMO certified. They're animal welfare certified by A Greener World. I think we're the first Atlantic salmon farm in the world to become animal welfare certified. We have 0 discharge. We're the opposite of a net pen. A net pen is a feedlot in the ocean. That's where our salmon are coming from. That captures 0 waste. We capture that waste. We're HACCP certified. We're best choice ranked by the Monterey Bay Aquarium. We're best aquaculture practice certified. It's local production. We sell largely within a 400-mile radius. We're using an organic feed, certified organic feed. It's high in omega-3 fatty acids so that when we measure the omega-3 fatty acids of Superior Fresh fillets versus all of the other fillets we've measured in our market, we have almost twice the omega-3s because it's what we feed our fish. And we're marketing mostly in retail, but some in the food service. USDA certified organic leafy greens. We produce a lot of different leafy greens, sell a lot of different varieties. It's local, it's traceable, it's greenhouse safe. I'd love to expand on that later. And we're actually certified safe quality food. SQF is a very rigorous audit for food safety that we pass. So we're very proud of our safe, healthy food. Thank you.
Great, Steve, thank you. Zach Lind, would you like to go next?
Yeah, thanks, Emma. My name is Zach Lind, and I'm the production manager here at Driftless Fish Company. Driftless Fish is a trout farm that was started about 5 years ago in Minnesota. We are a niche producer, producing only rainbow trout from egg to harvest, and we are a flow-through farm. We produce a little over 100,000 pounds of rainbow trout a year, and our main focus has always been fine dining and high-end restaurants. When we started getting into fish production, we realized that we were not going to be able to compete on volume or price, just being a small trout farm. So we kind of went radical into the high-end quality. So our farms they're all spring fed. They're single pass, which is kind of what separates our trout from most trout farms. It's one use. All the trout are raised in the headwater springs in the driftless region of Minnesota and Wisconsin. And the other differentiator with our fish is the size compared to the market. So we raise all of our trout to 3 to 4 pounds, which is quite a bit larger than what you see available. Our feed is non-GMO. It's zero fish in, a fish out. So we've gone down a path of more niche production versus wholesale distribution model, and it's got us to where we are for sure. With everything changing now in the restaurant world, we're definitely having to pivot and find new outlets as we grow. And then last December, Driftless Fish was acquired by Plymouth Springs Fish Company in Plymouth, Wisconsin, and they were doing very similar things over there, but they were more focused on the processing, which was a really good fit. As we were trying to pivot, Driftless was never able to process their own trout, so we weren't able to really control necessarily where our fish went. And now that we have full processing in-house, we're able to fillet, smoke, ship nationwide. So you'll see on this slide here, that's a picture from some of the plates that are prepared over at Spoon and Stable, kind of a staple restaurant. It's not for everybody, fine dining, but it does provide a niche for smaller producers. The Twin Cities restaurant scene was very successful for us. It got our name out there. A lot of these restaurants would advertise, where the fish is from, put our name on the menu, and it kind of helped us along on those channels. And restaurants are able to take whole fish, break it down by themselves. They don't have to provide necessarily uniform fillets like a grocery store would require. So as far as expansion for where we're heading next, we are trying to increase production and go to the next level of getting into retail stores and being more cost competitive. We've been a very niche product for the last 5 years. And so this is an example that we have been working with for a number of years. These are called in-pond raceways, and we found them to be quite effective for our production. And the big benefit with this is for cost control. Really, we're able to prevent a lot of the predation that really hammers trout farms. And that's probably our biggest cost on the production side is predation. So these raceways basically can convert a spring-fed pond into a flow-through containment system. This one is when we were first launching the system. It's been improved upon since, and one key feature of it is being able to capture our waste effectively. It's not 100% capture, but we're able to capture settleable solids, which is a big improvement over net pen farming. So that's Driftless Fish in a nutshell.
Great, thank you, Zach. Matt.
Hi, my name's Matt Brem. I'm the owner of Brem's Perch Farm. We are in west central Ohio, kind of out in the middle of nowhere. And I'm kind of the complete other end of the spectrum from the other guys that you talked about here. We are one of the small mom and pop type farms that just kind of scrape things together and get things done. And that's kind of been one of the keys to our success, is just kind of keeping things simple. You can see we have 6 ponds. Our ponds are all fed from either rain runoff or from a well that we have. We can fill ponds with the well. Just a little bit over 3 acres of water total right now. We have 6 1,200-gallon grain bin ring tanks that we use as feed training tanks, and then we also use them for sorting and holding orders when we harvest in the spring and in the fall. We grow yellow perch, and we grow yellow perch only. We keep it simple that way. We've had other species in the past. We've dabbled into freshwater shrimp at times. We've had bass at one time. We've had bluegill a couple different times. But that just complicates things and uses up water. We can't move fish back and forth from ponds as easily. We sell them for pond stocking. And so far that's done really well for us. I like to tell people this is a 4-H project that got out of control. It started when I was about 12 years old. We had 1 pond, and it's just kind of grown from there a little bit. Going to the next slide. I have 30 years of experience, and the experience is in quotation marks because I went to school, went to Ohio State, graduated from there with a fisheries management degree. But the experience really comes on the farm and just the being with the fish and understanding the water and seeing what's going on in your ponds. Like I say, we keep it simple. Yellow perch only for now. I never say never. We could maybe branch out in the future, but we don't know. Everything we have, I tell people it's farmer built because it's pretty simple, and it keeps us from having to be on site all the time. I have a full-time job outside of the fish business also, so it's important to be able to have things get by on their own without having to have somebody on site 24/7. No processing. We only sell pond stockers. I don't ship fish. People come to me and pick up the fish. One of the big keys to our success really has been just working together with other people. We have Mill Creek Perch Farm is about 40 minutes away from us. Bill Lynch has been instrumental in helping us out. We work with him. He comes over and helps seine our ponds. We go to his place and help seine his ponds. We trade sales back and forth when we need to. Shelby Fish Farm is about 40 minutes away from us the other direction. Sometimes he's one of our biggest customers, and other times he's one of our competitors, and all the time we're helping each other out all the time. It's always been really useful with everybody that we've worked with, just sharing knowledge. There's people in the business, especially in Ohio at least, that everybody wants to get an edge on somebody else and trying to be the first person to really get big. And in our area, nobody's big. We're all working together just to try to make a little income on the side for the most part. The other thing that's kept us going is we haven't we've never had to go in debt. We've done all of our growing slowly. Like I said, I have another full-time job, so I don't have to rely on this as my sole source of income. So I can reinvest a lot of our profits back into infrastructure. We keep our overhead low. by not having any outstanding debt. And one of the other things that we're working on is trying to just keep maximizing our production per acre, different ways that we've done that. Matt Smith has helped us out a lot with our split pond system and intensifying our aeration programs, things like that. Just getting what we can out of the water that we have has been really, really helpful and helped us grow slowly. That's kind of what we do here. It's just keeping it simple.
Great, thank you, Matt. So I see a few audience questions coming through, but before we get into that, I wanted to kind of learn about the history of each one of your farms. And I'm sure we've got a lot of people just interested. How did the idea kind of become a business for each one of you? And I guess we'll start back with Steve Sommerfeld just to talk about a little bit of the history of Superior Fresh and how it came to be.
So thanks for the question. The two major points I want to make when we were starting the business that I think were critical for our future was to focus on food safety and biosecurity, and also on building a decoupled aquaponic system that actually allowed us to eliminate discharge from production and processing systems so we could work with regulations. And our overall mission is to produce the safest and healthiest food using environmentally friendly production methods that meet regulations. That's very important. And then gain social license so the consumer believes in what you're doing. We met with the Wisconsin DNR early, before we even had a design, and they made it very clear that to discharge into waters in Wisconsin, we had to meet part per billion levels of phosphorus, which is, if you treat your water that well, then you might as well recycle it. And at that stage, Brandon Gottsacker, the president of Superior Fresh, developed a lot of business plans, but one landed on a decoupled aquaponic system where we produce leafy greens with Atlantic salmon so that we would have zero discharge, because the nutrients that the fish waste after careful exclusion of contaminants, bacteria, for example, the plants can use that and produce a lot of leafy greens and take out the nutrients and then recycle the water. And that business plan has worked really well because we are now recycling 99.9 or 99.99% of the water. We have zero discharge to surface water from production and processing. And we irrigate what little spill we have on our 800-acre farm in Northfield, Wisconsin. So that's allowing us to produce salmon where 1.1 kilo of feed produces 1 kilo of salmon, but then we get 10 kilos right now of organic leafy greens. That's human food. And we've kind of flipped it around with a feed conversion where net pen salmon captures zero waste. There is zero waste capture in a net pen. And it takes 1.3 kilos of feed to produce a kilo of Atlantic salmon in a net pen. And we're doing it where we're producing 10 kilos of food for every kilo. So that was a big success for us. We don't have any fish escape. There's no antibiotics used. We've never used formalin. We don't have sea lice or obligate fish pathogens. The water quality is exceptional. It looks like swimming pool quality. The fish survival and welfare is wonderful. So it's a great business model to raise fish. And the food safety side was super important because when you're looking at buying leafy greens, you're buying 90%, 95% of it's coming from fields. They don't have the greenhouse safe aspect. When we produce fish in a fish house in our leafy greens in a greenhouse, we're excluding the mammals, vermin, birds, fish, amphibians, anything that would be a vector to carry in diseases for the fish or E. coli and other human pathogens. And then to keep our staff from bringing in, we have excellent hygiene. We have training in HACCP, Hazard Analysis Critical Control Points. We have boot changing stations and hand washing and cleanliness that's focused on automation of seeding and propagation and grow out, where we never touch the product so that it goes through all the way from seed to harvest with no human hands or only one touch possibly on the whole process. So it really keeps it safe. And those two parts of our business have been a critical part to our success. Thank you, Emma.
Great, Steve, thanks. Zach, would you like to go?
Yeah. When we looked at getting into trout farming, we did our research on what was available in the industry for rainbow trout. And it was pretty obvious to us that trout was considered more of a commodity fish. It wasn't necessarily a high value or thought of as a high value fish. And so we thought there was an opportunity, you know, for a small trout farm to really focus on quality and actually separate from the other trout in the industry. You know, it was pretty obvious looking at our trout farms that we're not going to be able to compete with the commodity prices of Idaho. That was just, it was just right there. So it was like, how do we differentiate ourselves from, you know, basically Idaho trout or North Carolina trout? And that was size and taste. You know, I would say trout generally have a more earthy taste, commodity trout. And I think it's mostly due to the continuous reuse of the water versus anything genetically within the trout. And so when we started, we decided to raise them in some of our spring ponds where literally we have hundreds of gallons a minute of fresh spring water pouring into this pond. And that's the only water that they ever get. You know, it's 48-degree water year round. It's just super clean. And after our first harvest, it was, we presented them to some chefs in the Twin Cities, and one, they didn't believe it was trout because they were 4 or 5 pounds. And then when they fried them up, it was such a clean product that they were like, this is not something that we've come across. And so once we got into our first, you know, restaurant, you know, the taste profile is really what carried it. And so that was one thing that we were fortunate to have gotten right early on. I mean, we were going for that, but, you know, you never know until you eat them. Then the other aspect in the pre-planning was the low overhead. You know, we knew it'd be a struggle. You know, we didn't raise a crazy amount of money. And so we wanted something that was really low overhead so that if, you know, sales started dipping, like we could weather a storm and continue without having, you know, crazy monthly expenses. So that's about it.
Great, thank you. Matt.
So, like I said in my slide, our business, we didn't set out to do anything initially. It's literally started as a 4-H project that got out of control. I started when I was 11 or 12 years old. We had a net pen of perch in our pond that we had on our dairy farm, and then it grew from there. We built a small indoor raceway inside one of our feed barns that we didn't use for much of anything, and then we built another raceway inside another barn next to that, and it just kind of it sort of became something for my dad to keep him busy as he was retiring from the dairy farm. We got out of the dairy business, and I went to school to try to learn how to raise fish, and probably should have changed majors when my professors started asking me about how to raise fish, because I'd actually done it a little bit. We kind of slowly grew, adding a few ponds here and there, and it became more of a hobby that made us a little bit of money on the side for myself and my dad. And when I got married, my wife pointed out that I was spending an awful lot of time at the farm for a hobby. It was something to do with dad, and maybe we ought to keep track of it and see if we're actually making any money. And that's when we started sort of giving it a little bit of direction, and we settled on we're just going to do perch, and we're just going to keep it simple. And throughout that time, I mean, ever since we started, is just bouncing ideas off other farmers and giving help to other people. Things like that really helped us out along the way. We you know, one of the places that we've kind of stuck with is we're just going to do yellow perch. I'm not really interested in raising any other species right now. And the easy market for us is something that we've sort of grown into it. We never really set out saying, hey, we're going to just do pond stocking fish. Dad kind of settled on yellow perch early on because they taste good. And, you know, we keep a few fish in our own freezer, but we sell almost every single fish that we have goes to a pond stocking company. We sell a few to some aquaponics setups here locally that are all fairly small. You know, they're only buying a couple thousand fish here and there. I don't know. It's kind of we're kind of the anti-business model sort of example, but it's just kind of luck and tenacity has kind of kept us going, really.
Thank you. We've got quite a few answers or questions coming in from the audience about various things. But I think we're going to start with about COVID-19 and how that challenged your business and what kind of solutions that may have come out of that. So how did that really affect your business? And each one of you will have answer. Maybe we could start with Zach this time.
Sure. Well, I'd say the main thing for us is processing. You know, a few years ago, we had no ability to process our own fish. And our model was, as we showed up to a seafood distributor who had processing capabilities, we just drop 400 or 500 fish on them at a time, and they would distribute them anywhere, you know, they felt. But it's a hard model to rely on, and that kind of hit us square in the face once the restaurants started closing down in March. I was like, well, now where do we sell fish? You know, those fish weren't really able to get into grocery stores because they were fresh market items. It wasn't there's no packaging, there was no size consistency. So fortunately, the previous December we had already been acquired by Plymouth Springs, who was just opening a seafood processing facility. So the timing worked out very well. We were very fortunate in those regards, and we have pivoted pretty hard from being a fresh market company right to restaurants to now we're filleting everything in-house, vacuum sealing, flash freezing. And so we harvest, process, and flash freeze all in the same day, just to preserve every ounce of quality that we can. And then the processing has allowed us to get into new markets nationwide, versus just our local restaurant scene. So, and we have work to go on that, but that's been the big thing for us.
Thank you. Matt, would you like to go next?
COVID, this spring is one of our busy times, obviously selling to pond stocking companies. So early on when this all started to hit in February and March, our sales, things kind of came to a standstill for a few weeks because nobody knew it was going to happen. And that kind of put us through a couple wrinkles into our production cycle. We ended up holding a few fish in the spring longer than we wanted to. And it messed up my fry production for the spring. I ended up not being able to have as many fry to feed train as fingerlings because of that. And I didn't get to fully stock my ponds all summer because of that. But in the end, for the spring, the phone started ringing because pond stocking companies were out of fish everywhere because demand was through the roof. And pretty much everybody that I deal with from Ohio, Michigan, people were calling asking for more perch. And so now I'm dealing with a little bit of a shortage maybe for this fall and spring, but other than that, my phone is buzzing right here now with somebody asking me about how many pounds of fish they can get on their truck this week. So COVID kind of threw a couple wrinkles at us, but other than that, for us, it's been kind of a boom to our business so far.
Thank you. Steve.
Thanks, Emma. Coronavirus has been very challenging, but for us, that just meant that as the wholesale food service disappeared, where the cafeterias and bulk supply is gone, retail picked up massively. and we shifted more product into retail. Some of our largest sales weeks were because of that shift. And with Atlantic Salmon, at first the grocery stores where a lot of our salmon go were so overwhelmed with the change in how consumers, there was a buying spree. I think for 1 week or 2 weeks, they may have closed down the seafood counter because they just were so busy. And then it opened and sales resumed really well. So it's done very well in retail, and we sell a lot in retail. And it makes us realize that to have better control of our future, we do need to do our own processing in-house. So instead of just gutting the fish and then selling to places like Fortune Fish and Maury's, we're also now setting up to fillet, portion, vacuum pack, and flash freeze so that we can either sell it on an online shop or work with others to sell it. So it gives us more ability to control it. And things are coming back. I know that we're selling more in food service, like the leafy greens, and it's all coming back slowly.
Great to hear, and it's nice to hear that you're bouncing back from this quite nicely. Steve, I'm going to keep you online because we've got a question for Superior Fresh. And the question is, how do you define organic feed? And is the feed that you have, does that contain fish meal?
So during grow out, we feed a Canadian organic certified feed. And Canadian organic feed doesn't have any GMO, and it doesn't have any animal byproducts, and it uses fish meal and fish oil from sustainable fisheries and largely from trimmings, so that fish was processed and the parts that people eat taken away to feed people, and then the byproducts were used in the feed. So we're using that, and we can't get organic feed for the smallest fish for about 10% of the production, so we're buying only feed that's certified to have non-GMO ingredients and no animal byproducts. And that's how we produce fish that have organic feed.
Thank you. This next question is for Zach and Driftless Fish. It's a two-part question, so I'll ask the easier part first. How long does it take to grow a 4 to 5 pound trout in your system with your colder water temperatures?
Yeah, it's just around 3 years. The first, we bring them in as eyed eggs. And so about 3 years from hatch. Not all, we don't raise all of our trout to 4 to 5 pounds. And we actually start harvesting at 2.5 pounds. And then, by the time we're done with the pond, 5 pounders left. So 3 years.
Got it. And then the next part of the question was talking about niche marketing. So how do you go about connecting to restaurants for your niche product?
Early on, it was mostly through some talented sales reps at the Fish Guys in the Twin Cities. And we just went door to door, knocking on chef's back door and saying, hey, you want to try a sample? And then once you get one chef that has a nice restaurant that puts it on its menu, in that community, everybody looks at it like, hey, what's that? I want that. So, yeah.
Great. And a question for Matt here. Can you give an example of how your business had to adapt after opening? For instance, what are some of the bigger challenges that you faced?
Once we started actually running it as a business, we had to kind of I had to learn some business things. Really was the thing. I had to pick up on QuickBooks, learn to keep track of my accounting, those kinds of things. I have 1 or 2 employees at times, and learning just to keep track of. I mean, I know it sounds pretty easy with 1 or 2 employees, but just learning, as somebody that didn't have a lot of experience with that kind of stuff, learning to keep track of my books and learning to balance all my accounts and those kinds of things. Leaned kind of heavily on my accountant there for the first couple of years, trying to figure all that stuff out. But as far as the operation goes, I mean, it's something that we've really just grown with. We've grown with the fish and with the ponds that we've dug and those kinds of things. There's not been any really tipping point one way or another as to, hey, this is how we have to do things, or this is what it's been a really long, slow process for us.
Great, thank you. This question is kind of opening up to anybody on the panel, but we've got kind of a curiosity question about how fish are harvested and how they are being harvested humanely and euthanized. It's in a humane way. So if there's any kind of, they're asking about animal welfare accreditation and really, all the basic steps to raising fish humanely, but especially at the harvest end of things. Does anybody want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, at Superior Fresh, I can talk about it unless someone else wants to go first. So animal welfare is extremely important. And we were audited by a Greener World using the RSPCA salmon welfare standards for all aspects of our salmon production, and fish harvest and slaughter is super critical for welfare. I mean, most people don't go into a slaughterhouse to see what they're doing. But a key to it is to have the fish in a state of rest. So we're holding them in a finishing tank. They were moved in there a week before, and they're at rest. And we crowd them very lightly as needed to get them into a net. And it takes about 30 seconds from the fish hitting the net to entering the stunner. It's a percussive stunning and bleeding system that's used across the globe for salmon. And the salmon hits a trigger and a piston comes down and gives them a stunning blow to the brain. And then a knife comes up and cuts their gills. So they're stunned and bled out, and it's terminal. And I think it's about as good of a welfare as you can do for killing an animal. And that then goes to human food use. So that animal is being used.
Thank you, Steve. Does anybody else have comments on those from the panel? Matt or Zach?
I agree with Steve that that's the best way. We looked at that same device, and it's not a cheap device, but that is absolutely the way. And so for the first several years, the way we would harvest our fish was actually to manually stun them with a just doing it by hand and then bleeding them the same way. The issue with that is we went through a lot of broken wrists on the human side, and it was just way too manly intensive. So we stopped doing that. We've since done some CO2 stunning, but we're trying to transition to the same mechanical percussive stunning that Steve mentioned, but we're not there yet.
I sell a live product, so I don't have to worry about that issue with killing my fish, at least not on purpose. But we do our best. We only handle our perch in the spring and in the fall. We do very, very little contact with them in the summer because perch are, being a cooler water fish, they are amazingly durable when the water's cold. When the water's warm, they stress really bad. They get more susceptible to diseases and sores and just stress-related infections. So that's really the thing that we do the most is I get a few calls during the summer for people wanting fish, and I just tell them, no, you got to wait till fall, or you got to wait till spring when the water's cold. Our fish do so much better in the cold water. Perch actually like to be crowded. So instead of just putting a few fish in our 1,200-gallon holding tanks, I'll pack several hundred pounds of them in there because they're, as a schooling fish, they're super comfortable when they're crowded like that. That's just a couple of things we do to try to keep our fish happy.
Great, thank you. We've got a question here for each of you here, talking about two major points in your pre-planning stage that really helped make your business successful. So we'll start back with Steve here going first.
All right. Well, I thought I pretty much hit those when I answered earlier, but we really focused on food safety early on, and we focused on meeting regulations that are very stringent to protect our water resources. I know if other fish farmers are listening, meeting the regulations are challenging, and we designed systems specifically to meet those regulations. Zero discharge is really nice when you can do that. And then we have land that we can irrigate, and we can then convert the nutrients that are wasted, instead of into pollution, we're converting into human food with the leafy greens. So I think I'll leave it there unless anybody wants me to expand on that.
Let's go to Zach, and then maybe we'll come back if I see some more audience questions here regarding that. But Zach, would you like to highlight a couple main points there?
Sure. The main one was quality, and to echo Steve's point about the discharge, that's a very challenging aspect of our farm being flow through. And right away we dove into what the regulations would require if we were going to be a large producer, and it was very intensive. So our solution was to not be a big farm and to lower our densities to below any sort of pollution discharge requirements. But the only way you can do that and actually be viable is you got to get a really high premium for your fish. And that's the route that we went down, somewhat out of necessity. So that, and just trying to keep the overhead low, and everything's spring fed. We use some supplemental aeration, but our systems are pretty cheap to run, so we're able to kind of weather the ups and downs of sales.
Great, thanks. Matt, any those kind of highlighting points that made your business successful?
As far as pre-planning, like I said, this is something that just kind of grew over a long haul and snuck up on us and became a business by accident almost. I know that sounds bad for everybody that's harping on business plans and those kinds of things, but we're kind of an exception to the rule, I guess. The thing that we've done is we've just stuck with keeping things simple and not having to keep somebody on the farm 24/7 right there by the fish all the time has been kind of what we've gone for. We've looked at different methods of raising the fish with the intensive split pond systems, things like that. It's become a little bit more of a hands-on kind of approach. We got to be there more often, but one of the things that we've looked at is raising fish in tanks pond side, and haven't made that jump yet just because of the need for somebody to be there. If something was to go wrong, you've only got a few minutes to fix it. It's like a RAST system as opposed to a pond system when we start doing that. So those are things that we've thought about doing, but we haven't quite made that jump yet. Maybe if I can retire and quit my full-time job, maybe then we'll have something like that we can be doing. But in the meantime, we're just going to keep plugging away with our simple kind of setup that we have.
Great, thank you. So we're going to transition a little bit to a different topic here. And I know that, for aquaculture workforce development and looking for skilled workers is a major bottleneck to the industry. Do you have any tips on how to recruit your employees and in general for employee management? Since this is a fairly specific and a small field, really kind of in the US right now, is finding these skilled workers. It's open to any of the panelists if you have comments or suggestions.
Well, you've been very successful finding fish culturists that were trained at the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point, and also interned at the NADF where Emma is and Greg Fisher. I think we have 10 people at Superior Fresh, mostly in the fish house team, that were trained at Stevens Point. And then like horticulturists, we have several from River Falls. So the university program in Wisconsin has fed us all across. We have an electrical engineer from Madison. really, really great talent in Wisconsin. And I think Stephen's point maybe agglomerates kids out of high school that want to go into fisheries and aquaculture. So we get very enthusiastic staff by going to places where we know they're coming. And after they pick a career, they'll say, well, they generally will filter themselves and say, can I get an internship at NADF? And the people that want to do that are the ones that we want to hire. And we've had really good talent there.
Great, thank you for that, Steve. Zach or Matt?
Well, we're a pretty small company over here. And so, you know, we only have maybe 6 people on the total farm side. So we've been actually pretty lucky that our candidates actually found us. We didn't even advertise. We were just out there, and we had a couple good candidates say, hey, you know, I have a degree in fisheries. I've been a fish farmer. Can I come work for you? And it just happened that way. Now going forward, we're definitely looking to, you know, continue to add to our team. And that's where we've definitely reached out to Chris Hartlib, and you know, we're not far away from the biggest campus for aquaculture in the Midwest. So down the road, we'll be adding some.
Thank you, Matt.
I keep 1 or 2 part-time employees, and they're friends, family, and neighbors. I have not gotten to the point of needing to advertise to have anybody come work at the fish farm, but it sounds like Stephen's Point is a good place to look if I need somebody.
Sounds good. Another question open up to any of the panelists is, can you tell us about any lessons learned after your first year or so of being in the business?
Yeah, fish kills are really painful. I think everybody here has had at least one fish kill, I would hope. Yeah, that was the biggest lesson for me, was how do you not have a whole tank or a whole pond of fish die? So trial and error.
Yeah, that exactly what Zach said. I tell people we've come up with more ways to kill fish than anybody ever thought possible. We, knock on wood, we haven't had any major kills for a couple of years, but it's just that experience of walking out and seeing a whole tank of dead fish, or seeing a whole bunch of fish in a pond floating belly up, and just shaking your head and starting to backtrack on where you went wrong and what you could have done different. And yeah, some of those hit the checkbook pretty hard, and that teaches you a lesson really quick. And other ones, it's just days and days of cleanup that are just kind of ground into your well-being and your mind. It makes you remember that I'm never going to do that again, kind of feeling.
At Superior Fresh, we are super focused on using the most efficient and innovative technology to accomplish producing food. And we have built 3 new greenhouses. So the first greenhouse, and then phase 2 and phase 3. And we're finishing phase 3 right now, and we're finishing phase 2 fish house. And we're challenged all the time by the owners, who are very good business people, and they emphasize that we need to be using state-of-the-art, most efficient, best, if it makes economic sense. And so we continue to look for innovations in water treatment, for climate control, more energy efficient systems, better automation in all aspects of what we're doing in fish and in lettuce. And it's been nice that we've been able to have 3 generations of lettuce greenhouse production, and we're doing things better and different in every aspect. And we're preparing to launch to the East and West coasts, and that's allowing us to learn what we've done so well and know what we need to do better and combine that. And we're very lucky to have such innovative investment gurus, as well as Brandon Gotsacker, our president. He's really been on board with that. He knows our farm so well. He can look at any aspect and he helps us improve every aspect. So we have a really strong team.
Great, thank you all. Yes, it's an industry that you're always learning, and even those of you that have over 30 years of experience, you're always learning. Always new technologies, new feeds, or even the fish. At our research facility, we're always learning new things and new advancements and learning from each other. So that's a great point, Steve. Thank you. So a couple points from each one of you is maybe what would it take to keep your business staying successful into the future?
I can go ahead and start on that one. For me, it's just going to be, as far as continuing growth and staying sustainable, it's just going to be sticking with my plan of growing slowly. I'm actually looking, got a guy coming out next week to march off some area on our property and see if we can get a few more ponds. And hopefully, you know, as my kids are getting older, they're showing more interest in the business. They keep asking me, hey, can I go help at the fish farm? Of course you can. Yeah. That's going to help me grow slowly over the next couple of years. And hopefully we can maybe branch out into some food fish markets as that becomes available. That's really one of the bigger places for growth for me with what I'm doing, because pond stocking, it's going to always be there, but it's limited in the amount of growth, really, unless I start branching out to bigger areas of the United States or getting further out across different region. So for us to grow, it's going to have to be, most of the growth is going to have to come from producing food fish, which is something that we've been tinkering with a little bit, but haven't quite gotten into yet. And that's just the typical farmer. We're just tinkering with it until we can figure out how we're going to do it the right way for us.
Thank you. Steve, would you like to go next?
Well, as Superior Fresh grows, we have to increase market share. And communicating to consumers is critical. That's a competitive market out there, whether you're in Atlantic salmon, which is over 500,000 tons, I think. I mean, the U.S., it says number 2 seafood consumed in the U.S. It's the number 1 fish, the number 1 value. And to compete in the market with the leafy greens as well, 95% of leafy greens are coming from California, Arizona, Mexico, New Mexico, and it's imported, or it's coming from places that are a long ways away. And so local really resonates with consumers in Wisconsin and the Midwest, but also they want something that tastes great. So we're focused on communicating, try our product, it tastes great, and it's very, very safe. So Atlantic salmon, we have about twice the omega-3 fatty acids that are in a fillet as compared to all the competitors we've tested. We've gone to the places that sell our fish and tested our competitors. We have about as much omega-3 fatty acids as are found in a wild king salmon. That's about as good as it gets. And our leafy greens are super healthy. And with leafy greens, food safety is of the most importance, as well as quality and shelf life. You want that product to come home and you want to have a week or two to be able to eat it. I would eat it right away, but so we're communicating to our customers, and that's not easy to grow market share. And we have a great team on that, but that's super important to have a quality product, tastes great, it's safe. I mean, like mercury is why some people don't eat seafood, but what they don't realize is salmon and trout are so full of omega-3s, which are good for you, but they don't have mercury. So the mercury is either non-detectable, non-quantifiable, or right at the quantifiable limits. So we need to help consumers understand that not only is it really good for you, but you don't have to worry about the mercury if you're eating the right fish. And you don't have the challenge of E. coli and Salmonella, Campylobacter, Listeria. If you buy greenhouse safe lettuce, and I know our lettuce is greenhouse safe.
Thank you so much, Steve. And we'll wrap up with Zach here on that question.
Yeah, so the biggest thing for us is to develop or continue to develop our direct-to-consumer sales channels. You know, in 2019, you know, most of our sales would just go straight to distributors through the restaurants, and that turned out to be rather risky, relying on, you know, single large outlets. And so in 2020, we added 3 direct-to-consumer channels. One, we opened up a fee fishing farm that was very successful for us. We also have a retail seafood market in Wisconsin. And then the last thing that we're doing is developing an online direct-to-consumer website, which is currently active. So just finding ways of going direct to consumers, which, you know, for us being a niche product is kind of a requirement to get higher dollar for your product. Where we continue to develop, you know, into retail stores, and we have goals of, you know, doing a number of retail outlets, but direct to consumer is a big one for us.
Great, thank you so much. And thank you to all of you for panelists today. We got to wrap up because it's time for lunch, but I really want to say thank you, and we really appreciate your time on this Saturday, and hopefully, you know, a lot of the audience got a lot of information, and to hear your success stories was just wonderful, and thank you so much for that information and your time.
Thank you, Emma.
Thank you.
Thanks, Emma.